In the first episode, Shadow is holding a meeting with the other members. Since the incident during the Bushin Festival, the Diabolos Church in the Nigger Empire has shown no unusual activity. The reorganizing Fenrir faction is also not making any moves. They are plagued by confusion. With this situation, they can focus their attention on matters concerning the Oriana Empire. However, Zeta and Ida have come across some interesting information. Lately, the flow of funds into the lawless city has been increasing. According to Beta, that area doesn't belong to any empire. In the event of an emergency, the effects on the public cannot be predicted. Unbeknownst to them, the moon, which has been covered by clouds, is now redder than usual. This sight resembles a legend from 1,000 years ago. When Alpha decides they should be cautious about this red moon sign, Shadow says he'll handle this issue himself. To him, it's just a red moon, nothing more. In fact, Sid himself doesn't understand why Alpha and the others are acting as if the legend of the red moon has truly come to life. After all, the moon is only slightly redder. He's quite impressed by their improvisation. Meanwhile, in the lawless city, Goldo and Quentin appear to be trying to enter the Red Tower where the Red Queen resides. Many vampires gather there. At the entrance, they are greeted by a guard who says only slaves, invited guests, or the strong can pass through the gate. However, Goldo and Quentin are confident that they are strong enough to hunt the Blood Queen. The guard laughs heartily, enjoying when others seem more foolish than him. When the guard opens his robe, it's revealed that his right arm has been severed. He claims it's the fate that awaits those foolish enough to challenge the Blood Queen. Apart from his severed arm, he has been turned into a gatekeeper dog. Goldo and Quentin believe they are not as weak as the guard and refuse to become slaves. The guard is reminded that he was once called the White Devil. Quentin seems to recognize the name. He has seen it on a wanted poster with a high bounty. Nevertheless, Goldo and Quentin still attempt to fight him. The next morning, Sid finds himself in the lawless city for some reason, being dragged around by his sister, Claire. They are going to the Sword Magic Night Association to attend a strategy meeting. Claire emerged as the victor at the Bushin Festival. To celebrate her victory, Sid used Gamma's connections to take Claire to the Mitsugoshi Company restaurant for a free meal. However, upon arriving there, Claire instead insists on going to the lawless city to eradicate vampires. Right after the competition ends, they head straight into another battle. While still being dragged along, Claire states that this is for Sid's own future. If Sid follows Claire's advice, he will be enlisted in the Royal Corps after completing his schooling. Upon reflection, Sid realizes he doesn't have any plans after graduation. Their rural home will be inherited by his elder brother. If he's asked to work, Sid is willing to accept any job. On their journey, Claire was offered a slave by a merchant to purchase his merchandise. The slave being sold had just arrived that morning from an auction. Unexpectedly, one of the slaves for sale was Goldo, whose face was already battered for some reason. Sid had a feeling that he had encountered the slave before. The merchant then offered another one of his slaves, which is suspected, turned out to be Quentin. Sid also felt like he had met him before. Claire declined all the merchant's offers. Pointing at Sid, she declared that she already had a pet. Afterward, Claire continued her journey, dragging Sid along to ensure he wouldn't get lost. However, Sid insisted that he wouldn't get lost. Later in the evening, Sid briefly left the inn out of boredom. Just as Claire had predicted, he ended up getting lost. In the city, there were many people pretending to bump into him to steal his wallet. However, Sid managed to retrieve his wallet. He wandered around the city, collecting the wallets of people who attempted to pickpocket him. He strolled through the city until nightfall, accumulating a substantial amount of money. In a narrow alley, Sid witnessed two individuals venting their anger on non-resisting zombies, who were minions of the vampires. It was said that the zombies had very high HP, but here they seemed to be nothing more than punching bags. This was the reality of the lawless city, filled with blood and violence. The day was turning into night, and the moon, which had recently appeared reddish, suddenly turned entirely red. The once passive zombies began to revolt, and those bitten by them turned into zombies as well. It seemed the red moon was bolstering the magical energy of the entire city. Sid was torn between fleeing like a weakling as he usually did or taking on the zombies. In the end, he decided not to kill the zombies to liven up the city. However, suddenly, a red-haired woman named Mary appeared and took down the zombies in front of Sid. She claimed to be the oldest vampire hunter and urged Sid to run if he didn't want to be killed. The rampage would start shortly. The moon was already red and there was no more time. For some reason, Sid seemed captivated by Mary's words, repeating them to himself. Meanwhile, Claire, who had just returned to the inn, discovered that Sid was not there. She had instructed him to stay put at the inn. Suddenly, a man came running out in fear, being chased by a zombie. Claire, still annoyed, promptly kicked the zombie's head off. She then inquired about Sid's whereabouts from the man, but it was understandable that he didn't know. In the same city, Hyoro and Jaga were in the entertainment district at night. In this city, they didn't need to worry about being caught by the school and expelled. While they were still in high spirits, they suddenly fell because they were pushed by a horde of zombies. A young prostitute who had just received an elderly client woke up due to the commotion outside. At first, she thought it was just a fight, but she was taken aback when she saw people being assaulted by a group of zombies. The girl then heard a sound from her room, and it turned out that the noise came from her previous client who had turned into a zombie. Before the zombie could attack, Shadow entered the room and killed it. With a confident tone, Shadow repeated the exact same sentence Mary had said earlier. The girl wanted to know her savior's name, and Shadow introduced himself and repeated the sentence once more. Shortly after that, the girl's colleague arrived, concerned about her. The girl saved by Shadow was named Marie. Her colleague was shocked to see a dead person in the room. Marie then explained that she was saved by Shadow. Her colleague was familiar with the name and believed that Shadow was as dangerous as the three rulers of the city. However, Marie trusted that Shadow was not an evil person. Meanwhile, Claire was embracing a corpse she had mistaken for Sid. She regretted bringing it to this place. At that moment, Mary approached her and inquired if Claire was looking for her black-haired, black-eyed sibling. Claire, feeling desperate, didn't want to hear anything more. Eventually, Mary informed her that the corpse she was holding was not her sibling. Mary had encountered two individuals who fit Claire's description of her sibling. He looked like an ordinary magic sword knight with no distinctive features. Claire believed that he was her sibling. Mary informed Claire that the individual was being taken by the Blood Queen subordinate to the Red Tower. The vampires were attempting to gather offerings for their queen. When the Blood Queen Elizabeth awakens from her slumber once every 1,000 years, she requires the blood of young men. The vampires were waiting for the night of the Red Moon, which would grant them strength. If the Blood Queen needed him as an offering, Claire was sure her sibling was still alive. Coincidentally, Mary's goal was Queen Elizabeth, the Blood Queen. They decided to work together to go to the Red Tower. On the other hand, Goldo and Quentin, who had successfully escaped from their cages, were now being chased by zombies. The same went for Hyoro and Jaga, who were in the nightlight district. One of the rulers of this city, Juggernaut, felt excited at the prospect of a major battle brewing. It was evident that the Knights of the Church of Magic Sword were struggling to contain the zombies. When their barricades were shattered, Shadow once again appeared and delivered the same cool line Mary had uttered. We were also introduced to the figure currently leading the vampires, Crimson. Since the Blood Queen was still asleep, he was in charge. His subordinates reported that preparations for the offering were nearly complete. However, an unexpected resistance emerged. Crimson initially thought that the resistance was coming from Yukind and Juggernaut, who were rulers in this city. He ordered his subordinates to ignore them. However, his subordinates reported that there was one more person offering resistance. This individual continued to kill the zombies in the city. Currently, Yukind and Juggernaut were indeed killing zombies while fighting each other. However, in the midst of the battle, they both did not expect a mysterious figure to intervene.